Welcome back, everybody. Sorry for the long delay, some stuff happened, but we're back today with another player profile. Last time was Dak Prescott, and keeping on the topic of the Dallas Cowboys, today's profile is on Amari Cooper. I have very high hopes for Amari Cooper this coming year, and I'm going to break down some of the reasons why. First thing I want to start off with is how he did last year, just to give you guys some background. He was the wide receiver 16 in half PPR formats, so a mid to low wide receiver 2 based on your league size, and was the wide receiver 21 in points per game. He had 130 targets for 92 receptions, 1,114 yards, and 5 touchdowns in a full 16 games, which is pretty damn impressive when you consider the fact that Dak played 4.5 games, and the rest of the year was played out with the motley crew at quarterback with Andy Dalton, Ben DiNucci, and Garrett Gilbert, as well as not having any offensive linemen left that were healthy by the end of the year. Considering he came off the board as the wide receiver 13 at pick 32 overall, it has to be considered a disappointing season purely from a production and value standpoint, although he did only average a 1.5 less per game than the wide receiver 13, so not too far off. It really makes you consider and think about that gap between wide receiver 10 and wide receiver 24 and how small it really is in the grand scheme of things. I'm not excusing the fact that he underperformed, just trying to point out a little bit of perspective so we can get a better idea as to how we should really be drafting wide receivers. So coming into the fantasy season this year, still the off season, but it is off the back of a ton of breakout performances, a ton of standouts. Davante Adams lit the league on fire in like 13 games. Justin Jefferson broke out and hit the gritty all over the Eagles, who took fucking Jalen Reagor ahead of him. And when the other team's front office laughs at you for making a pick, that should pretty much be your clue that it was a bad pick. Who else had a great year? Tyreek Hill stood out a bunch. Chris Godwin underperformed, but he was still fine. A bunch of other guys broke out, and that's kind of caused Amari Cooper to fall down a bit, that in tandem with his disappointing season. RotoWire, I've moved on from using the other fantasy website. Their shit's kind of weird. Couldn't find anything else until recently. We got RotoWire. His PPR ADP, sorry, no real good half PPR ADP. The first player off the board is like James Robinson, so something's clearly off there. They have him at wide receiver 17, pick 46 overall. So tail end of the 4th round, middle of the 5th, depending on your league size yet again. And he is coming off the board as a mid to late wide receiver 2, which to me screams value, and I'm going to get into the reasons why. Moving into pass production, this gets a little bit iffy because you have the Raiders years, obviously, which is vastly different to his Cowboys years. Personally, I'm not going to place a ton of stock into the Raiders years, given that he's not there anymore and won't ever be there again. Far different system, far different team in Dallas. So when you look at those years, 2019 was his best, coming in at the wide receiver 9 overall, wide receiver 12 in points per game. This is all half PPR, by the way. I figure it's the best balance. 2018, he only spent half of his time in Dallas, I believe weeks 6 to 15. In that time, he was the wide receiver 9 and the wide receiver 2 in points per game. His overall ranking for that year was dragged down by his time in Oakland, but the moment he stepped in Dallas, he produced, he killed the game. Wide receiver 2 in points per game is incredible considering he got there mid-season. When you get good players, they're going to produce anywhere you put them. When you put the ball in their hands, they're going to make shit happen. So you're drafting Cooper right now at the floor of his 2018 finish, which was wide receiver 18. And he was dragged down by his time with the shitty Oakland Raiders because John Gruden thinks he's smarter than everyone else. But in reality, he's that kid in the corner we all laugh at because he's making an absolute fool of himself. He's been a consistent wide receiver 1 in Dallas the past year and a half, 2 years, and he was on pace to do so in a very big way this past year. Looking at what could have been of the 2020-2021 Dallas Cowboys in terms of fantasy production brings a tear to my eye almost. We could have gotten the best quarterback performance in fantasy football over the last 20 years. I believe Peyton Manning's 2013 or 2012 campaign was the only one that would come close. Dak Prescott was on pace for over 500 points. All you really need to know. And from weeks 1 through 4, the 4 full games of Dak Prescott, I'm not going to count the half game where Andy Dalton came in because Andy Dalton kind of stinks. Amari Cooper was the wide receiver 3 in half PPR, tied for wide receiver 2 in points per game. In full PPR, he was the wide receiver 1 overall in those 4 weeks, wide receiver 1 in points per game, even finishing above Davante Adams in that short time span, who was on an absolute tear. If he kept that pace for a full season, which I'll be honest, almost certainly wasn't going to happen, they were scoring a ton of points, throwing the ball the absolute shit ton. He would have had 204 targets, first in the league, 148 receptions, I believe first in the league, 1,604 receiving yards, and 4 touchdowns. That over a full season would be the wide receiver 3 and half PPR with 267.2 points, and the wide receiver 2 in full PPR with 340.8 points, only behind Davante Adams. I know that doesn't look super impressive being the wide receiver 2 this year behind Davante Adams, who was clearly pacing the pack. It wouldn't have just been the wide receiver 2 this finish. It would have been the third best wide receiver scoring season over the past 5 years in fantasy football, behind Michael Thomas's incredible campaign last year, I believe, and then Davante Adams this year. Wide receiver 3 over the past 5 years. If that doesn't put into perspective just how dominant and productive he was going to be this year with Dak Prescott, I don't know what else will. And he wasn't really inconsistent like people say he is. He's kind of moved past that narrative. In the 4 weeks, he had 18 points, 16 points, 18 points, and 33 points. Consistent wide receiver 1 production with a breakout in there, showing you exactly what he can do on a week-to-week basis. Getting volume, only scored once and he was still putting up that amount of points. No real touchdown dependence for those of you who are worried about that, although when he scores, it certainly does bump that total up quite a bit. It's really sad that it never came to fruition because it would have been a damn fun season to watch the Cowboys, and I don't think they keep that pace up from last year going into this year, but I think it's something to definitely keep in the back of your mind moving forward into drafts. So sliding real quick from what could have been last year, just some past efficiency, I'm finding it hard to put a ton of stock into efficiency or individual metrics from last year, just based on the clusterfuck of an offense he was a part of. So we'll take a quick look at 2019, 7th in receiving yards, 8th in total yards, 9th in yards per target, 10th in yards per route. Didn't mean for those to descend, but hey, sometimes shit happens. And he was 7th in production premium, which compares the outcome of all targets, takes into account game time, score, all that type of shit, and then compares to the base average. He was 7th in the league, so you're getting a very high-level receiver who is producing far above the league average at wide receiver 17. Kind of doesn't make sense. Just a brief look at those efficiency statistics. Now that we've taken a look at what Amari Cooper himself was doing and what the rest of the team wasn't doing, we're going to look at what the team was doing. Last year, they had the 11th highest pass play percentage, which kind of seems low, but they had the single most pass plays run last year at 683, as well as the second most offensive plays run, only behind the Los Angeles Chargers, led by Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, and held the fuck back by Anthony Lynn and Shane Steichen. The year prior, in 2019, without Mike McCarthy, they were tied for 10th with 37 pass attempts per game and tied for 3rd in total plays run. Long story short, this offense is going to sling the rock. They're going to run a shit ton of plays, and Amari Cooper is going to be one of the biggest beneficiaries from this offense, just running a shit ton of plays pretty much every week. Also, if I haven't mentioned it yet, which I feel like it's kind of important to mention, they will be getting Dak back, who seems to be having a really nice, clean rehab. Haven't heard anything bad about that. The break itself was pretty clean. No tendon or ligament damage, so that's a positive. And they're getting offensive linemen back, Zach Martin, Leo Collins, Tyron Smith, all crucial parts of this O-line who they're going to be getting back. Plus, Zeke should be back to 100%. I know people have their feelings on him, but when he's fully healthy, he helps to open up that defense just a little bit because of that threat of him underneath. So, taking everything into account, the pass production, how he's been a consistent wide receiver on the Cowboys, what they were on pace to do last year, like I've said, probably won't be maintained, but they could keep something relatively close to it, all that type of stuff. I think that Amari Cooper is a ridiculous value in the 4th or 5th round. People are forgetting about him because of the bad news Cowboys from last year and fading him way too hard. People don't remember the fact that he was super dominant weeks 1 through 4. Yes, it was a small sample size. Yes, it was weeks 1 through 4, but that gave you a glimpse of what he could do with Dak in this offense, and people are just brushing him off. You're getting easy top 10 upside, if not top 5, on a both week-to-week basis and a year-long basis. Not a ton of receivers can put you up 30 any given week and still finish in the top 5. Amari Cooper is easily one of those guys. You're getting Dak back, 3 key offensive linemen, as well as a healthier Zeke to help open up the run game. Like I said, personally looking at RotoWire's ADP data, he is 23 spots lower than DK Metcalf. And if you're looking at the running backs available in the general pick range of both of them, give me Antonio Gibson or J.K. Dobbins and Amari Cooper over Kareem Hunt or Chris Carson and DK Metcalf pretty much every day of the week. I don't even think it's close. You're getting a shot at an RB1 with one of those two, and a top 5, top 6 receiver in Amari Cooper, and a guy who I'm probably going to be lower on than a lot of people, DK Metcalf, and just some middling RB2s and Kareem Hunt and Chris Carson. They're not going to give you a ton of value there. He will likely clock in as a top 6 to 8 wide receiver on my rankings. It's a really tough position to rank this year. There's so many guys who you can make a case for being top 6. I know not everyone's going to finish in top 6, but damn, tiers are going to be helpful this year because there's going to be a lot of people in that second tier. Even if they don't maintain their absolutely torrid pace from last year, this is going to be a high-octane, high-production offense for both fantasy and real life. Will it correspond to winning games? God only knows. We don't care about team success here. We just care about fantasy points. Ooga booga fantasy football. There's a chance you can stack him and Dak in the 5th, 6th, or 7th round based on how ADP in your draft shakes out, which to me is a duo that can win you the league. You're getting a guy with QB1 upside who I'll probably have in my top 3 quarterbacks when I get around to those rankings, as well as a guy who I think is giving you top 6 receiver upside, and they're going way later than they really should be. Like I've said, he's supremely undervalued, and he's way closer to that group of Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, and Stephon Diggs than he is to T. Higgins, Robert Woods, and Kenny Galladay. That's going to be it for today, guys. Hope you enjoyed. It's good to be back. I like this player profile stuff. Gives me a chance to dive in deep on some of the guys I'm really looking forward to drafting. Up next, maybe Nick Chubb. Maybe I look at another receiver. Maybe I look at a running back I'm a fan of. Who knows yet? If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. If you didn't, leave a dislike. Tell me what I could do better. Always willing to improve. Hopefully I fixed the audio. I know someone commented that was a problem last week. Kind of not the best with like tech and audio and shit, so I'm kind of figuring it out on the fly. Hopefully that's better. Alright, have a nice day, guys. Peace.